You gonna cry? Looking like this?
That movie definitely left me with some mixed opinions. Someone online put it best. They said, every aspect of the movie was either a 3 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. One of those things, at least for me, that were a 10 out of 10 were the emotional moments. And I will say, I and like half of my theater were crying for basically like the entire second half of the movie. I feel like I really left that theater with a different mindset on my friendships, and movies that really resonate with you that much are few and far between. One aspect of this movie really resonated with me the most, however, and that aspect is everything that was going on with Jax. It hit so close to home that I wanted to make this video before I even made a basic review on the episode itself. The message his arc as a whole is trying to say and teach you about human relationships is really important, especially in the time we're living in now. And I really feel like so many people either completely miss the message of his character, or they're just choosing to ignore it, or they don't understand how serious it should be taken. Not to mention the fact that I think his character actually has a secondary message that I've barely seen anybody talk about, but I'll save that one for later. I don't want to ignore the fact that this finale had some major flaws. It definitely does, and I have a lot of criticisms on it. One of those criticisms happening to be that they sacrifice so much screen time for an ending all about one single character. What's so confusing for me, though, is that in a vacuum, Jax's ending is so good. The message that's trying to be told with his story is so powerful in my opinion. So before I even make my video criticizing the ending as a whole, I really want to act like the rest of the plot holes and issues aren't a factor for right now, and focus on Jax's character arc and what message it's trying to send. Let's start with what message that actually is. A lot of people were very upset at Jax's ending, giving the criticism that Gooseworks somehow managed to write an ending for Jax that upset both Jax fans and Jax haters. The reasoning is that if it was for Jax fans, he was meant to have a redemption arc, and he should have survived abstraction through Pomni's empathy for him. And if it was meant to be for Jax haters, his actions should have been confronted, and instead he just abstracts off screen and gets to run away from all wrongdoing. While I feel like the argument that he shouldn't have abstracted off screen has some merit to it, what really makes no sense to me is that lots of people seem to think the message behind Jax's character is that as long as you have enough empathy for someone, they can be redeemed. Not only is this flawed because of what we were shown in the movie, it's also flawed due to everything Jax does to the other circus members. If empathy no matter what was the message of Jax's character, then that also means another message of his character is that you should suffer through someone else's abuse in hopes that you caring about them enough will change them. This cannot be the case. The true message of Jax's character is this: you cannot hope to grow or change if you don't try to change yourself, and if you don't accept the help of those who want to help you. It isn't redemption, and it isn't punishment. Well, I mean, it kind of is punishment here, but that isn't the main moral. We knew all of this from previous episodes already, but Jax's main specialty is that he puts up defenses for himself. Habits that he's learned over time to keep his true self safe from pain. When you put up a farce for other people, when that fake version of you gets hurt, you don't feel anything. When the real version of you has been hurt so many times in such deep ways, this is unfortunately what ends up happening. It's why Jax runs away from any sort of confrontation, especially anything relating to the part of himself that he's locked away so deeply. We'll talk more about the ways in which he puts these defenses up later in the video, but right now I want to talk about what really puts all of this into context. The scene that hit me so hard, it inspired me to make this video in the first place. This scene with Ribbit is so well done, partly because we can put ourselves in Jax's shoes, and partly because a lot of us have probably been in this situation before. In the movie, when Jax first says, "I told you I was homeless," my heart genuinely sank in my chest. In the entirety of the show, this is the first real piece of information we ever got about Jax's life from before he was in the circus. And it gets even more emotional when he launches into the gritty details of his home life. This scene is the perfect sucker punch. We watch this character we know as cold and unfeeling slowly start to develop a bond with Kaufmo and Ribbit especially. We watch as he slowly starts to let all those defenses down that he's put up for himself over the years. In fact, one scene shows him dropping his defenses particularly well.
Oh, he laughed! Ah, yes, we did it!
Shut up! You caught me off guard.
Notice how after Ribbit gets Jax to laugh, he specifically says, "You caught me off guard." This is 100% intentional. Jax is still trying not to show any real emotion to those around him due to all the hurt he's been caused over the years. These scenes really help to support the scene that takes place in Ribbit's room. It's so strange and foreign to hear him talk like this that it really makes it hit that much more. Michael Kovac really did a good job with his voice here too. Hearing him talk like this is so different than when he's trying to act all aloof and play his funny one character. I gotta be honest, I was trying my best not to disturb the people around me, but I cried so hard during this scene. I tend to get really emotional during shows and movies, but something about this scene made me feel so sorry for Jax. When you're being your authentic self and you get hurt so badly, it makes it so hard to open up to people moving forwards. It's so much easier to just put up these defenses like Jax does, because that way you'll never get hurt. But then at the same time, you'll also never have a true connection with anyone, because you'll always have to act like someone you aren't. Trust is something that is so special. In a world where sometimes it feels like everyone and everything is against you, you can have this invisible bond with someone else, another human just like all the other ones that came before that hurt you so badly. A bond that is so strong you don't even have to worry. And what is so heartbreaking about this scene is that for probably the first time in a long time, Jax is able to feel what it's like to trust someone. Buried deep in his abstracting memories is this one moment where Jax felt like he could be himself. This thing that is so alien and anomalous to him. He tries to get up and run away like he did from all his problems before, saying that he overshared, but still, Ribbit pulls him back in and tells him that it's okay and that she's glad he trusts her. This scene really shows what these situations are like. Jax even says it himself.
Shit. This is embarrassing.
But conversations like this are always going to be embarrassing. They are always going to be uncomfortable. But what's worse, a difficult conversation or never being able to truly feel comfortable with who you are? After Ribbit puts the bow on Jax's head, the theory that Jax is transfemme or somewhere on the transfemme or queer spectrum is heavily implied, if not outright confirmed, which we will talk more about later. But like the setting, the voice acting, the music, the jarring aspect of Jax showing real, deep emotions for the first time in the show, all of these things really come together to make this scene special, to show how having this connection with someone is so beautiful, which makes the next part even more tragic. As Kaufmo rings the doorbell, the music abruptly stops and Jax is snapped back into his fake reality. Telling this to Ribbit was one thing, they were especially close, but Kaufmo is a whole other world to him. Trusting one person was already a stretch for Jax, but as he gets snapped back to how he usually is, it sets in with him what he just did and what he just said. He gets visions of all the pain he felt when he was honest with someone like this before. He throws his bow on the ground before telling Ribbit never to say this to anyone and leaves. Why did Jax do this in this scene? I think it once again has everything to do with his parents and the way his parents, specifically his mom, treated him. In this scene where Jax is explaining the way his mom would treat him, he said that things were always so confusing, and that after he told his mom his secret, she went off on him with insult after insult, and at the end of it all, she hugged him. This seems to be a pattern in Jax's life growing up. He spent all this time with parents that would teach him these patterns. His mom would unload all of her negative emotions onto him, and then after all of it, she would do something affectionate like hugging him. It's because of all the emotional abuse he received over the years that he developed this avoidant attachment style. He's learned after all of this time that whenever there is affection, whenever there is love, pain is going to accompany it. Now, here he is in Ribbit's room. This is a safe space with a safe person who just wants to be there for him. As he's opening up to her, those old patterns start to get triggered within him again. He sees the love and support he's getting from Ribbit, and is then waiting for the pain to accompany it. The issue is that despite the fact that Ribbit would never do something like that to him, everything he's learned from the majority of his life is telling him that it will. He decides here that instead of sitting around to find out when the pain is going to come, he's just going to run away from it. They really nailed the emotions in the room when Jax is going through this. And what really breaks my heart in this scene is how Jax is talking and how Ribbit is looking at him. It's so clear that Ribbit more or less knows what he's going through. She wants to be a safe space for him so badly, and she's genuinely concerned for him and what he's currently going through. After he puts his defenses for himself up again, he slowly drives Ribbit away from him more and more, which eventually leads to her abstraction. These scenes are so hard to watch, but are necessary for the ending that we got. Look at the way Jax talks to himself in these scenes. It really gives context for what's to come later.
Why am I such an idiot? Why am I such an idiot? Why am I such an idiot? You're not looking too good.
You gonna cry? Looking like this?
This might be a really unpopular take, but I feel like a lot of people are really hard on Jax as a character. Do not get me wrong, he sucks so badly, and the things that he does to other people are completely inexcusable. But at the very least, I feel like a lot of people label him as just a bad person. One of the main points of Jax as a character is that if you are terrible to people around you, you cannot be doing well at all deep down. The only reason Jax acts in these ways is because he's projecting while simultaneously trying to push everyone away, so nobody ever gets close enough to hurt him again. When I was little, I remember when teachers at my school would tell all the students that the only reason bullies exist is because their life isn't going great in other ways, or they got bullied themselves. And I remember being so confused about that for a long stretch of my childhood. It's one of those things where you kind of have to have a lot of life experience to understand it. Deep down, we really all are just chicken fetuses and eggs that need to be cracked open. We all have terrible stuff that's happened to us that we've learned to cope with in some way or another. Hurt people really do hurt people. And on coping mechanisms, I really do want to go more in depth into what we see in Jax's mind before we even start to go into the whole flashback scene. If you've gotten this far in the video and you're enjoying what you're seeing, please consider subscribing to support me in the goal of making YouTube my full-time job. Thank you, and back to the video. When Pomni steps into Jax's mind, she's greeted with a room containing a bunch of doors, all with Jax's signature room sign, but they all look off somehow, almost as if someone was trying to draw it from memory. All of these doors represent different aspects of Jax's personality and how they would be affected if each member of the circus that he cares about abstracted. In the first door that Pomni checks, Ragatha is the one who abstracted. Ragatha was the last person Jax considered to be a friend after all the stuff with Kaufmo and Ribbit happened. In this scenario, Jax completely flies off the deep end and lets the part of him that wants to push people away and not think about others' feelings completely overtake him. Then there's the scenario where Zubul is the one to abstract. This one is a little tricky, but I think he's dressed up in a maid dress in this one because he has nobody left to project his insecurity with his gender and queerness onto anymore. Because he doesn't have Zubul to project onto anymore, he has to find a different way to let that part of himself be expressed, so he starts to dress more feminine, while also simultaneously trying to push that part of himself down by giving excuses like he wanted to honor their memory. Then there's the final door Pomni enters, which is the scenario in which Gangle is the one to abstract. This one is much like the last one with Zubul's abstraction. Jax uses Gangle as a means to strengthen his coping mechanism that everyone in the circus are just cartoon characters. Gangle is the one who fits into her role the strongest out of all the circus members for Jax, especially due to her comedy mask gimmick. This, accompanied by her not really standing up for herself, makes her an easy target for Jax to further this coping mechanism. Then there's the real final door, which is completely bolted shut with the picture of Jax scratched off. My belief is that this door represents what would have become of Jax if Pomni was the one to abstract. It's very clear that this is not something Jax wants to think about, because not only does Pomni really try to help him, but she also reminds him so much about what happened with Ribbit. After Pomni makes her way through all of Jax's scenarios, she makes it to a room where she sees 4 different versions of Jax, all representing the Jaxes we just saw in the previous room. Cartoony Jax is acting over the top and talking very meta about the episode. Maid Jax is trying to justify why he's wearing the dress and saying that it's ironic, and cynical or selfish Jax is silently judging everyone around him. It's also worth noting that selfish Jax's eyes are way bigger than any of the other Jaxes, which, if you haven't noticed, this only happens when he's actively using his coping mechanisms or something emotional shakes him up, something we've seen the real Jax do many times before. Then there's a Jax that we didn't see in the previous room. There's the Jax playing the piano. This one is really interesting. Personally, I believe this is the Jax that was supposed to be in the door that is now chained up. This Jax represents the part of him that deep down really cares. It's why he's the one that's doing something passionate like playing piano, and it's also why he's the one that eventually gives Pomni the key to the real Jax. It's also really interesting that this Jax is chained up to the piano. Apparently in Jax's mind, he didn't have to completely lock away the part of him that cares, but there is one thing that he did have to lock away completely. After the door that is both chained and boarded up makes the tiniest noise, every single Jax except for Piano Jax stops what they're doing to tell the door to shut up. I believe this is the door that represents Trans Jax, aka the Jax that allows others to know who he actually is. This is the deepest part of himself that has been hurt the absolute most. This is the chicken fetus in an egg that he said didn't exist. All this time, he's locked this part of himself deep, deep down. This is the result of the years of trauma he had to go through with his parents. And we get to physically see how he uses all of these coping mechanisms to suppress this specific part of himself. They all work together to make sure nobody can ever get close enough to hurt him in the same way that he was hurt before. One of the scenes where we really see nearly all of these different coping mechanism Jaxes in action is in the fight between him and Pomni. Pomni and Jax spend this entire episode really bonding with each other, and by the end of of it, it's clear to Jax that him and Pomni were heading in the exact same direction that him and Ribbit went down. He realizes that Pomni is getting far too close, so he immediately has to put up all of his defense mechanisms. This specific part before they actually start fighting is very interesting because we get to see 3 out of the 4 Jaxes at play here in quick succession. When Pomni asks Jax what he would do if she abstracted, he says, "I'd move on and probably forget about you." This Jax represents the cold and apathetic Jax. This is the Jax that is intentionally rude and unfeeling so he can push away the people around him before they're able to get close enough to hurt him. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately from Jax's perspective, this defense mechanism works, and clearly really hurts Pomni. Jax then has both Piano Jax and Cartoony Jax pop up. He tries to use the fact that he was only joking to explain to Pomni that he wasn't being serious. This part is Cartoony Jax. But you can really see in his expression that the only reason he felt the need to say it was a joke at all was because Piano Jax popped up here, and he's the Jax that secretly cares deep down. The only Jax that isn't present in their argument is Maid Dress Jax, probably because it wouldn't really fit this scene for Jax to get insecure about his gender. This is a good time to say and talk more about the fact that Jax is almost definitely trans, right? I've seen a shocking amount of people say that because it isn't explicitly stated, it's wrong to assume that he is. Let's look at the, in my opinion, overwhelming evidence. First of all, let's look at the avatars of the circus members in the rooms that they were given. All of these bodies and rooms have a direct correlation to each circus member's insecurities, except for Kinger, who I guess is just goated like that. Pomni's insecurity is that she feels like other people always see her as a child, which is why she's a small childish looking clown whose room is a bunch of things way bigger than her. Zubul has body dysmorphia, which is why their avatar has swappable parts that never seem quite right, and why their room is filled with mirrors to make them constantly look at themselves. Finally, we get to Jax, whose room mysteriously represents a little girl's room. It's full of bright pink colors, and many pieces of furniture fit for a little girl. If Jax's insecurity isn't with being feminine, then I don't know what his insecurity is. Then, of course, there's when Ribbit takes her bow and puts it on Jax's head. This was right after Jax was explaining how he told his mom something deep and personal, and explaining how his mom always conflated the ideas of being feminine with weakness so heavily as he was growing up. Next, there's Maid Dress Jax, and this refers to both when real Jax was wearing the dress and the one that exists inside his mind. When Jax gets voted into wearing the maid dress, he gets extremely flustered. Zubul even says, "I've never seen you this worked up before." Jax is so embarrassed about wearing this dress and being around the other circus members because even if they don't know the truth about him, well, maybe Zubul does, he still has to face this thing that he normally has locked deep, deep down. Maid Jax also has some really interesting lines when sitting at the table in Jax's mind here. Maid Jax responds to apathetic Jax, who called him out for wearing the maid dress. He says that he's only wearing the maid dress ironically to show how little he cares, before randomly swearing out of nowhere. I feel like this is as clear an indication as any that Jax is not just wearing it ironically, but he has to lie about why he likes to wear feminine clothing because if he doesn't, he feels like he'll be hurt again. Maid Jax also says something here that leads me into my next point. Just before Pomni throws a bottle at him, he starts talking about how you women need to quit prying all the time. The fact that Maid Jax said this is not a coincidence. All the times Jax has made fun of women around him or made fun of Zubul for being queer, it was all because he's projecting. He is so insecure about this part of himself that he feels like he needs to insult all the women and queer people around him. There's one more piece of evidence towards the trans Jax theory, but I'm gonna save it for the end of my next point, because I feel like it fits better over there. After all of this symbolism about Jax, it's pretty much certain that he is trans or at the very bare minimum some form of genderqueer. He puts all of these feelings behind a locked door deep in his mind and uses coping mechanisms as bodyguards to protect it even further. After Pomni gets the key to the real Jax and sees all these memories he buried deep down, she finally finds the real Jax. This scene almost hit me as hard as the one with Ribbit, because as Pomni is running towards Jax, the way he's talking is just so raw and self-deprecating. He keeps saying, "You aren't supposed to love me, and you're not supposed to miss me, and this isn't how it's supposed to go." When I was watching this scene, it made me realize one very important piece of information about Jax. He hates himself just as much as everyone hates him, if not more so. I already really felt for Jax as a character before, but this scene took it to another level. Jax does things that are completely unacceptable, that is a fact, but the only reason he does these things is because he genuinely, truly feels that deep down he is completely unlovable, that the true version of himself is completely undeserving of love in any capacity. Not only does he put up these defenses and try to protect the real him, but deep down he knows the pain those defense mechanisms cause other people. He is constantly stuck between a rock and a hard place. The best example of this can be seen with Ribbit. After Jax has his conversation with Ribbit and his defenses come back up, he tries so hard to push Ribbit away, and it works completely. He does all of these things to protect himself from the pain of the past, while at the same time understanding fully what these actions are doing to him in the present. This is exactly why Ribbit is such a sore subject for him. It's because he knows that if he didn't do what he did, then she still would probably be around. It's why he goes up to her door to check on her before she abstracted. It's also why in episode 7 he looks so sadly at the snowy globe in Kane's office, because this is the moment that he fully pushed her away for good. Deep down he cares so much. That's why in this scene he says he knows that he's a terrible person.
I'm a terrible person. Is that what you want me to say? I already know I am.
He knows the things he does hurt people, but his trauma hurts so badly too. It's all a vicious cycle. If he tries to open up, he's reminded of the part of himself that he hates. If he doesn't, his coping mechanisms activate and hurt the people around him, reinforcing an identity for himself that he's a terrible person. The question then becomes, what should have Jax done in this situation? He should have accepted the empathy that others were trying to give him. Jax always had two choices: keep shielding himself from all of his pain and never be himself, or finally open up even though that's gonna hurt too. The distinction between these two choices is that one not only keeps you unchanging, but also hurts the people around you, and the other is gonna hurt a lot, most likely more than the first option, and it will be extremely uncomfortable the entire time. But it's also the only option that will ever get you to change and move forward from the things that happened to you in the past. There's meaning to be found in a stagnant life. That is the thing Gooseworks says she wants people to take away from the Amazing Digital Circus. But after watching the finale of the entire series, it almost looks like that is not the moral that is created. On the surface, it looks like they just completely forgot about this. Digging a little deeper, however, I'd argue the exact opposite. This ending was a great way to illustrate this point, and I'll explain why. But we first need to define where we see these themes in the story itself. So, what exactly is this stagnant life that Gooseworks is talking about? Well, when it comes to the show itself, the stagnant life is being within the circus itself. Everyone inside wants nothing more than to leave. They can't talk to any of their friends or family from inside, and they are completely trapped and helpless. Zubul puts it best in this scene.
I had dreams and goals. I wanted to be able to leave my mark somewhere in the world. How am I supposed to just abandon that?
Zubul wanted to make their mark on the world, but they were forced into this crazy situation. They were forced into this stagnant life. So we have the stagnant life part, but where does the finding meaning come from? I believe one of the messages that the Amazing Digital Circus is trying to tell us is that we find meaning through the relationships we have with the people around us. The main way we find meaning in a hopeless situation is empathy. And funnily enough, Gangle adds right on to what Zubul said in that last scene by saying this.
You've made a mark in my life.
Empathy is one of the main consistent themes throughout the entire show, and for good reason. This is the one thing that supports the finding meaning part of Gooseworks' message. Think about what all of the circus members must be going through while being trapped inside of this video game. They're trapped in this world and they don't know why for a majority of the series. It's filled with bright colors and uncanny decorations. And on top of it all, every second of their existence is controlled by an unfeeling AI who has no regard for what they're actually going through. Through all of this, all of the circus members learn that the only thing they have in this insane situation is each other. They can find meaning in helping each other out and being there for each other, because in this crazy situation, what else do they have? Once again, Zubul puts this idea best.
And if I do still have problems, I talk about them with the people I trust.
And these aren't just empty words she says for the sake of filling up the episode. Almost every single character in the Amazing Digital Circus has a scene where it's just them and another member of the circus, talking about their emotions, problems, and going really deep into the things that are bothering them. And wouldn't you know it, the sole character who is left out of that statement for the majority of the series is, you guessed it, Jax. It would be one thing if the other circus members just didn't attempt to reach out to him in this way, but that's not even true. They have tried twice with him. Once it was Pomni, and once it was Ribbit. The issue is, instead of fully opening himself up, he always, one way or another, ends up pushing the people who are trying to help him away. Instead of trying to understand that the people around him are trying so hard to care about him and care for him, he'd rather hold on to the idea that they could never actually love him. Another thing that you may not have noticed regarding empathy in the Amazing Digital Circus is that every abstraction or near abstraction that we are given context for in the entirety of the show all happened in the absence of people. Every single time someone goes through the thing that represents them reaching their limit, their breaking point, they have been in isolation. It makes sense when you think about it, really. In this absolutely insane situation, what else do the circus members have to protect themselves from going insane but each other and their empathy for each other? In the entirety of the series, the entire cast is constantly going through hardship after hardship, and while their care for each other was always there, it was never explicitly stated until this one satisfying scene.
I think what we need to do now is to just be there for each other.
We're all in this together.
And we'll always be in this together. No matter what.
The point is, all of the circus members couldn't have survived even a little bit as long as they have without the love and support from the people around them who are in the exact same situation and understand what they're going through. Except Kinger, who is again just goated, I guess. It's why they can't find the same support with Kane, who doesn't understand what they're going through. That brings me to Pomni and what her joining the circus represents. Pomni represents consistent empathy. She is the type of person that genuinely feels the same emotions that others are feeling when they're going through a tough time. And more importantly, her empathy for others doesn't depend on how good of a person she thinks those people are. Her empathy is unconditional. That's why she's the one to save Jax from abstraction by ringing his doorbell. It's why she's the one to go into Jax's mind, and it's why she's the one to try her absolute hardest to help Gummigoo when his entire reality has been shattered around him. On the topic of Gummigoo, when Kane was torturing everyone in episode 8, I feel like the meaning behind everybody's torture scenes was pretty clear cut, all except for Pomni's, which took me a little longer to figure out. At first, I was like, so Pomni's afraid of being attacked by animals. That's kinda dumb. But it really clicked when I thought about what happened with Gummigoo in episode 2. About half that episode was dedicated to Pomni trying her best to help Gummigoo, and the only reason she's able to do that effectively is because she genuinely cares about him and is understanding of where he's coming from. Then, when they resolve their problem and come back through the portal, Kane just suddenly snaps him away and out of existence. Kane uses Gummigoo for Pomni's torture scene because Gummigoo represents Pomni's overwhelming fear that she won't be able to help the people around her. That in reality, all of the things that she tries to do to help others are actually completely out of her control and mean nothing. That's why she tries so hard to help Jax. She isn't trying to fix him like he believes. She genuinely feels for him and wants to help him. That finally brings me back to the final scene with Jax. We spent all this time talking about how Pomni represents unconditional empathy, and how Jax rejects that. And this scene shows that perfectly. As Jax is trying his hardest to get Pomni to go away, Pomni does not slow down, and in fact, she only speeds up. She refuses to give up on Jax, and it's only because of her unconditional empathy that Jax is finally capable of accepting himself. When I was leaving the theater for this movie, the message that I first thought it was trying to send is that everyone should have unconditional empathy, and this is the scene that first led me to believe that. But what I think is important to note here is that while Pomni's empathy is extremely kind and welcomed, it is not the norm. And even with all of that empathy, in the end, it was still too late for Jax. The point this scene is trying to make is that while empathy can help you change, you ultimately are the one that has to be willing to put in the effort to change. I thought a lot about why Jax didn't survive this finale, and this is the only explanation that made sense to me. The only reason Jax didn't survive is because he didn't even try to change, not even a little bit. And the only reason he did in the end was because of Pomni. With all that being said, like the fact that what Pomni is doing here is not the norm, and how badly Jax sucks, and after all the other stuff I've pointed out about this extremely complicated character, I think it's time for me to reveal the main point of this video. The reason why I think a lot of people don't fully understand Jax. You can't change if you don't put in the effort is definitely one of his themes, but I really believe he has an even more important one that I think a lot of people have severely overlooked. I'm sure you've seen the polarizing views on Jax as a character on the internet, but the side of people that completely hate him and everything he does just doesn't make sense to me. Maybe it's because I really relate to him as a character, or maybe it's because I love to give people the benefit of the doubt. The point is, I have always believed in Jax as a character. Gooseworks has said herself that Jax is a self-insert, and that all of the flaws of him and Kane are Gooseworks exercising her demons. Especially with Gooseworks herself being trans, Jax represents a version of Gooseworks if she didn't have the support that she has now. We live in a world where a lot of people see things in black and white, ones and zeros, and good and bad. This was the main issue I had with people who hated on Jax. They always just saw him as a bad person. I don't think that they ever really tried to put themselves in Jax's shoes. It's not hard to realize that Jax doesn't just do all of the stuff that he does for no reason. Everyone that hates on Jax as a character like that makes no sense to me, especially if they're still doing it after the finale came out. You should not accept the abuse of others even if you know they are in pain in some way, but that doesn't mean that just screaming at the problem is going to help either. People that are truly empathetic will understand that there is a middle ground. There is a way to continue to support people and still be there for them, even when they are acting in ways such as Jax. People who are truly empathetic will understand that it isn't all just black and white. And people who are truly empathetic will understand that we are all born into this world as crying babies, and our experiences and traumas are the only things that shape us. That some of us have more scars than others, and we can do things to help heal those scars for each other. It's so easy to see Jax as the villain, which is the point of his character. If you had gone through the exact same things that he had gone through, you would probably be in the exact same situation as him. The things that he does to others are objectively bad and terrible, but the only reason he does those things is because he has gone through so much pain himself. I feel like this is something that we could all do well to understand a lot more. This is the type of empathy that Pomni represents, and it's why she never stops trying with Jax. She always saw the pain behind the facade Jax put up, and it's why she always wanted to help him. Remember when I was talking about the trans Jax theory and I said there was one more piece of evidence? Well, after Jax fully abstracts here, the song Isn't She Lovely by Stevie Wonder plays. Not only do the lyrics support this theory, but this song is actually about the birth of a girl. This implies that in the end, Jax was finally able to accept himself for who he was. But the bittersweet part of it is that it was too late. Jax even says it himself just before he abstracts.
It's too late. I did this to myself. There's no coming back from this.
We see this everywhere with Jax's character. All the opportunities he has to change, like letting Pomni get closer to him, not running away after he had that conversation with Ribbit, or just stopping all of the terrible behavior that he inflicts on others because he knows it causes harm. He had so much time to take even the smallest chance on himself, even if it was scary, but he didn't. That's why his fate turned out to be this way. Pomni was there for him, and it wouldn't have turned out like this if he had just given even the smallest bit of effort. With that being said, Jax would have never even gotten to this point in the first place without Pomni. It is important to try and change yourself, yes, but in the end, the only reason why Jax is finally able to accept himself is because he found someone who saw past all of his pain and defenses, and still accepted him for who he was. This is the other message I think Jax's character is trying to send. The onus is not on the person in pain alone to change themselves, and the onus is not on the people around you to try and do their best to help you, even if it means sitting through abuse. Both parties have their own respective role to play. Sometimes I'll go on walks and I'll look around, and I'll see the birds flying around, and I'll see the tree leaves swaying in the wind, and I'll just think, what the f*** is any of this? In our day-to-day, it's somehow so easy to get distracted from these insane things, like the scale of the universe, like the concept of death, or that despite the fact that we've been around for 300,000 years as a species, we still don't have even a clue as to why any of this stuff around us even exists. In that way, we are already kind of in a digital circus of our own. We have no idea why we're here, we have no idea how any of this is even possible, and we have no idea if there's any way to escape or anything beyond this. The only thing that we do know is that there are people around us that are going through the exact same situation as us. And just like in the circus, we can all be there for each other in this insane situation. If I can talk a little personally for a second, I've gone through a lot of stuff really similar to what Jax has gone through. And I know he's a fictional character, but I guess that's why I feel for him so much. And also why I really wanted to make this video, to outline the message that was trying to be sent. When your trust has been broken so many times like that, it makes it so scary to talk to people and to be yourself around them. I remember even thinking about being myself around people would make my brain feel like it was on fire, telling me to never reveal who I actually am so I would never get hurt again. I'm still working on it every day, but it's gotten so much better over time. The only two things that changed for me were my willingness to push past those feelings and meeting people I really trusted. It's so strange how much easier it is for me to talk to my friends about how I'm really feeling now compared to how hard it was before. Jax's ending is meant to be bittersweet and tragic. It's supposed to instill these feelings to get the point across. The point that even with the most unconditional empathy in the world, even with the sturdiest rock in your corner, you aren't going to change unless you make the effort to change yourself. If you aren't willing to put in the effort to go through your pain instead of avoiding it, you'll always stay right where you are. Thank you so much for watching. I'd like to thank our Patreon subscribers for supporting this channel. Specifically, I'd like to thank Trey Cromwell for joining in our second highest tier, and Sylveon for joining in our highest tier, who I will now have to make a custom compliment for doing so. Sylveon, I bet you're the type of person who somehow always smells good. If you'd like to get your name read aloud at the end of my videos and you'd like to support the channel even further than you already have, please consider supporting me over on Patreon. As always, I've been Sunito, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, please consider subscribing.